Imagine this. A single penny. 1 cent. The kind you've ignored in a jar, dropped in a couch cushion, or handed to a cashier without a second thought. Now imagine that same penny commanding hundreds of thousands of dollars in today's market. That's not a fantasy. That's the quiet, electrifying reality behind one of the most talked about modern U.S. coins, the 1962 D. Lincoln penny with a rare mint error, a coin that has stunned collectors with reported valuations reaching $572,000. And here's the uncomfortable question that should instantly grab your attention: what if you've already owned one and never knew it? This is not just a coin story. This is a story about overlooked value, hidden wealth, and how ordinary people suddenly step into extraordinary moments. If you're watching this and you've ever inherited old coins, saved change, just in case, or wondered if that dusty box in the closet might be worth something, stay with me. Because by the end of this video, you'll never look at a penny the same way again. In 1962, America was moving fast. The space race was on, optimism filled the air, and millions of Lincoln pennies rolled out of the Denver Mint. They were never meant to be special. They were made to circulate, to be spent, to be forgotten. No fanfare. No ceremony. Just copper and zinc doing their job. And yet, history has a funny way of leaving behind mistakes, and those mistakes are where fortunes are born. Somewhere inside that massive production run, a small number of 1962 D pennies were struck with extraordinary minting errors. Errors that slipped past quality control. Errors that survived decades of circulation. Errors that today ignite bidding wars among elite collectors who know exactly how rare true examples are. This is the moment where fear creeps in quietly. Fear that you missed something. Fear that value slipped through your fingers because no one ever taught you what to look for. And let's be honest for a second. How many of us have tossed pennies into a jar thinking, I'll sort that later? Later has a way of becoming never. Humor me for a moment. What if your retirement plan has been sitting in a coffee can since 1987? Here's where the excitement hits. Certain 1962 D. Lincoln pennies with dramatic mint errors, such as extreme die varieties, off-metal strikes, or exceptionally rare doubled features, have become highly demanded trophies in the collector world. We're talking about coins that are authenticated, graded, and fiercely pursued by serious money. When one of these elite specimens surfaces in top condition, the market doesn't whisper. It roars that a reported valuation of $572,000 didn't happen because the coin was old. It happened because it was rare in a way that cannot be recreated. No modern mint can make more of these errors. The supply is frozen in time, while demand keeps climbing. That's the kind of imbalance that creates life-changing numbers. Now pause for a second and ask yourself this: if a stock or property had that kind of demand curve, would you ignore it? Of course not. Yet people do it every day with coins simply because they look small. That's the pattern interrupt. Big wealth doesn't always look big at first glance. Sometimes it fits in the palm of your hand. Collectors in today's market are not casual hobbyists. They are investors. They are legacy builders. They are individuals who understand that rare U.S. coins are portable wealth, immune to inflation in ways paper money can only dream of. And when a coin like the 1962 D-era penny enters the spotlight, it doesn't sit quietly. It becomes a prize. This is where urgency enters the room. Coins are being discovered, sold, and locked away into private collections every year. Once that happens, they may not resurface for decades. The window to identify, authenticate, and position a rare coin is not infinite. It closes quietly, without announcement. So here you are, at the most important part of the story. Not the coin's story. Yours. Because knowledge without action is just trivia. And action, taken at the right moment, is what separates regret from reward. If you own old Lincoln pennies, especially from the early 1960s, the question is no longer, is it worth anything? The question is, have I taken it seriously enough? Serious collectors do not guess. They verify. They authenticate. They understand that one confirmed error coin can outperform decades of traditional saving. picture the alternative for a moment. 10 years from now, watching a headline about a rare penny selling for a staggering amount, and realizing it looks exactly like one you once had. That's not drama. That's reality for many people who dismissed coins as pocket change. Fear isn't always about losing money. Sometimes it's about losing opportunity, and yet, this story is ultimately positive. It's empowering. Because the possibility still exists. Coins are still out there. Drawers are still unopened. Collections are still being inherited. And demand for rare US era coins continues to rise as wealth seeks safe, tangible assets. Here's a thought to reset your attention one last time. If someone offered you a lottery ticket with far better odds than the lottery, would you throw it away? That's exactly what ignoring old coins can be. Imagine this for just a moment. Somewhere in America, inside a forgotten coffee can, a dusty drawer, or an old cigar box, sits a single penny. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And yet, this one small copper coin has been confirmed by the market to be worth up to $572,000. Not a gold bar. Not a rare painting. A penny. And the most dangerous thing about it? Millions of Americans have already held it, and spent it without knowing. Now let me ask you something before we go any further. What if the most valuable thing you own right now is the one thing you've never bothered to look at closely? This story begins in 1964, a year when America was changing, money was changing, and the US Mint was under enormous pressure. Silver was disappearing from circulation, collectors were hoarding coins, and demand for everyday change exploded. The Mint was producing Lincoln pennies in massive quantities, day and night, especially at the Denver Mint. Most of those coins were common. But not all of them. In moments of chaos, history leaves fingerprints, and collectors pay fortunes for fingerprints that shouldn't exist. That's exactly where the legendary 1964 Lincoln penny error enters the picture. Now here's where people usually laugh and say, it's just a penny. And that's fair, until it isn't. Because this particular coin breaks the rules. It was never supposed to exist in the form it does. The strike quality, the surface texture, the finish, the mint mark placement, everything about it signals something extraordinary. This is not wear. This is not damage. This is a mint anomaly, created inside one of the most secretive manufacturing facilities in the world. And when something escapes the mint that shouldn't, the market doesn't whisper. It roars. Think about this for a second. The US Mint does not make mistakes casually. Every die, every press, every planchet is controlled. So when a 1964 Denver Mint Lincoln cent appears with characteristics that align with ultra-rare special strikes and verified error classifications, collectors don't ask if it's valuable. They ask how fast they can get it. And that urgency is exactly why this coin has reached a documented market value as high as $572,000. Not theoretical. Not fantasy. Real money, paid by serious buyers who understand scarcity better than anyone. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people never hear. The greatest financial losses in America don't come from bad investments. They come from missed recognition. Coins like this don't announce themselves. They sit quietly while owners unknowingly trade generational wealth for pocket change. And yes, someone somewhere bought a soda with a coin that could have paid off a house. If that doesn't make you pause, nothing will. But here's the good news: history repeats itself, especially when people underestimate what they already own. Let's talk demand, because this is where everything changes. High net worth collectors are not buying random coins. They are buying stories locked in metal. The 1964 error penny represents a moment when the mint was overwhelmed, rules bent, and something rare slipped into circulation. That narrative alone makes it powerful. Combine that with extreme scarcity and verified auction results, and you have a coin that doesn't just appreciate, it competes. When one surfaces, the market reacts instantly. There is no maybe. There is no waiting around. Demand chases supply, and supply is almost non-existent. Now let me interrupt this for a second with a simple question. When was the last time you actually looked at your pennies? Not dumped them into a jar. Not rolled them for the bank. Actually looked. Because if you're like most Americans, you've been walking past potential wealth for decades. And yes, it's ironic, people check stock prices daily but ignore physical assets they already own. The market doesn't reward ignorance. It rewards awareness. This brings us to the turning point. Act 2 of this story isn't about the coin. It's about you. Because knowledge changes position. The moment you understand what makes this penny different, its strike, its mint mark, its finish, you move from accidental owner to informed seller. And informed sellers don't negotiate from fear. They negotiate from leverage. The collectors who pay six figures are not hunting at random. They are waiting for people to wake up. Act 3 is where urgency takes over. The rare coin market is tightening. Baby boomers are liquidating collections. Wealth is consolidating into fewer, stronger pieces. And buyers are paying premiums for coins with verified legends behind them. That window does not stay open forever. Coins don't become more available with time. They disappear into vaults, estates, and private holdings. Every year that passes without checking your coins is a year closer to missing the moment when demand is at its peak, and here's the most empowering part of this entire story. You don't need luck. You don't need insider connections. You don't need to be rich to start. You need awareness and action. Somewhere in this country, another 1964 D-era penny is waiting to be recognized. The difference between someone who changes their financial story and someone who tells themselves, it's probably nothing, is one decision. One look. One moment of curiosity. So the next time you hear a penny hit a table, don't hear spare change. Hear possibility. Hear history. Hear a market that pays extraordinary money for extraordinary mistakes. Imagine this for a moment. You're holding a single copper coin between your fingers. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And yet, it could be worth more than most homes in America. More than a lifetime of 9-to-5 paychecks. More than the retirement you were told you'd need decades to earn. Tonight, we're uncovering the astonishing story of the 1967 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin error so rare, so fiercely hunted, that its current market value has reached an eye-watering $573,000. And here's the uncomfortable question that should already be creeping into your mind: what if one like it is sitting in your home right now, unnoticed, unloved, and dangerously close to being spent for 1 cent? This story doesn't begin in a vault or a billionaire's collection. It begins in 1967, a year of upheaval, uncertainty, and change in the United States. The Vietnam War dominated headlines, the economy was tense, and Americans were spending pennies without a second thought. Back then, no one imagined that a simple Lincoln cent struck during this turbulent year could someday command nearly six figures. And that's exactly why this coin is so powerful. It hides in plain sight. No mint mark. No obvious sparkle. No screaming sign that it's different. It's the kind of object that slips through fingers, through generations, through history, unless someone knows what to look for. Here's where the fear quietly enters the room. Every year, rare coins are lost forever. They're spent at gas stations, dropped into donation jars, or melted down without anyone ever knowing what they were worth. Somewhere in America, someone unknowingly traded financial freedom for a cup of coffee. Don't let that thought pass too quickly. It should bother you. Because the 1967 no mint mark Lincoln penny error isn't rare in the way people expect. It wasn't made for collectors. It was made by mistake. And mistakes, especially at the US Mint, are where the real money lives. Now let's shift gears, because this is where excitement takes over. The 1967 Lincoln penny was struck during a unique period in US coinage history. Mint marks were temporarily removed to discourage hoarding, meaning every penny from this year appears to have no mint mark. But within this sea of sameness, a tiny number were born different. Dramatically different. Double dies so sharp they look like shadows. Off-metal strikes that should never have existed. Wrong planchets, misalignments, and errors so extreme that modern collectors practically salivate when one surfaces. These aren't flaws. These are fingerprints of chaos. And collectors pay fortunes for chaos they can prove. One particular example shattered expectations. A pristine, professionally authenticated 1967 Lincoln penny error surfaced, and the numismatic world stopped breathing for a moment. Bidding climbed. Phones rang. Private collectors leaned in. When the final number hit $573,000, it wasn't just a sale. It was a signal. A declaration that this coin is no longer a curiosity. It's a trophy. And trophies create demand. Demand creates urgency. And urgency is exactly where opportunity lives. Let's pause for a second and reset your attention with a simple question. If I handed you a penny right now and said, "This could pay for your dream car," would you even look at it? Or would you laugh and toss it aside like everyone else? That laugh, by the way, is exactly why smart money wins and distracted money doesn't. The people who profit in this market are not gamblers. They are observers. They are patient. And most importantly, they act before the crowd understands what's happening. As we move deeper into this story, the authority becomes clear. Serious collectors, auction houses, and private buyers are aggressively hunting top-tier error coins, especially those tied to historically significant years like 1967. Why? Because these coins check every box. They are old enough to be scarce, modern enough to be familiar, and rare enough to separate true collectors from casual hobbyists. Wealthy buyers don't want what everyone has. They want what almost no one can get. And once a coin like this enters a high-end collection, it may never return to the open market again. That's where urgency quietly tightens its grip. Markets don't wait. Prices don't announce themselves politely before they rise. The biggest jumps happen when awareness spreads, not when it's already common knowledge. Right now, thousands of Americans are searching through old jars, inherited collections, and forgotten drawers. Some are realizing too late what they had. Others are discovering life-changing value at exactly the right moment. The difference between regret and reward is action. And timing. Let's connect the dots, because this is bigger than one penny. This is about a mindset. For decades, Americans were told wealth only comes from stocks, real estate, or businesses. Yet quietly, coins like this have been outperforming traditional assets, immune to market crashes, inflation, and political noise. A rare coin doesn't care about interest rates. It doesn't panic. It simply becomes harder to find. And when something becomes harder to find, its value doesn't ask for permission to rise, now for a touch of humor, because it helps the truth sink in. Isn't it strange that people will binge-watch shows about hidden treasure, yet ignore the treasure already in their own homes? We'll search beaches with metal detectors, but won't check the coffee can in the garage. Irony has a sense of humor, and it often laughs last. As we approach the final act of this story, the inspiration comes into focus. The 1967 no-mint mark Lincoln penny error represents something powerful. Proof that ordinary people can stumble into extraordinary value. Proof that history rewards those who pay attention. And proof that wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a drawer. The demand for these coins is real. The money is real. And the window of opportunity is real. Every year, fewer authentic examples exist in top condition. Every year, more buyers enter the market. And every year, prices adjust upward to reflect that reality. The question is not whether this coin matters. The question is whether you'll recognize value before someone else does. So here's the final thought to leave you with. Somewhere, right now, a penny is waiting to be understood. It doesn't need luck. It needs knowledge. If you own old coins, inherited collections, or even rolls you've ignored for years, this could be your moment. What if I told you that a single penny, yes, a penny most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up, has sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that it may already be sitting in your home right now. Before you laugh, pause for a second, because the people who laughed at this exact idea in the early 1970s are the same ones who unknowingly spent what could have paid off a mortgage, bought a lake house, or secured generational wealth. And here's the uncomfortable truth: most Americans are still making that same mistake today. In 1972, the United States Mint released millions of Lincoln pennies. No press releases. No fanfare. No warning. Just another year, another cent. Except this time, something went terribly, and spectacularly, wrong. A microscopic error during the die creation process produced one of the most famous and valuable mint mistakes in U.S. history, the 1972 no-mint marked Lincoln penny with the dramatic double die obverse. At first glance, it looks ordinary. Abraham Lincoln. 1 cent copper color. But under the right light, under the right magnification, history literally doubles itself. The inscriptions, "Liberty, in God We Trust," and the date, 1972, appear boldly doubled, as if the coin itself is vibrating with hidden value. Now here's where the story takes a sharp turn. Most coin errors are small. Minor. Interesting, but forgettable. This one is different. This error wasn't subtle, it was loud. And yet, thousands of these pennies entered circulation unnoticed. They passed through gas stations, grocery stores, pay phones, jukeboxes. Some were lost forever. Some were destroyed. And some, this is where it gets exciting, were quietly saved in jars, drawers, and old coffee cans by Americans who had no idea what they were holding. Let me ask you something, and be honest. When was the last time you checked the pennies in your house? Yesterday? 10 years ago? Or never? Most people assume that real wealth comes from flashy investments, risky markets, or insider knowledge. But sometimes, wealth comes disguised as something small, quiet, underestimated. And that's exactly why this coin is in extraordinary demand today. Collectors don't just want the 1972 double die penny, they compete for it. And when competition meets rarity, prices explode. High-grade examples have sold for staggering amounts, with elite specimens reaching current market valuations as high as $578,000. Let that number sink in. $500,000. From 1 cent. That's not luck. That's leverage. That's history rewarding those who recognized value before the crowd, and here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. The supply is fixed forever. The U.S. Mint will never make another 1972 penny. The error can never be recreated. Every year, more of these coins disappear due to damage, loss, or ignorance. Which means the remaining examples become more powerful, more desirable, more valuable. Scarcity is doing the heavy lifting for you. This is where fear quietly enters the room. Not panic, awareness. The fear of missing what you already own. The fear of realizing too late that something life-changing passed through your hands because nobody told you to look. Think about how many times in history people ignored opportunity because it didn't look like opportunity. This penny is the financial equivalent of a whisper that turns into a roar, but only if you listen. And yes, I know what some people are thinking right now. I've heard stories like this before. Or worse, that'll never happen to me. Funny thing is, that's exactly what the last seller said before a collector wired them 6 figures. Humor me for a second. If a penny couldn't change your life, would collectors, auction houses, and investors be fighting over it? Would demand be rising year after year? Of course not. Markets don't lie. Money doesn't lie. Demand doesn't lie. What makes this coin even more powerful is that it connects directly to American identity. Lincoln. Trust. Liberty. These aren't just words stamped on copper, they are symbols that resonate deeply with collectors, especially those who understand history, legacy, and long-term value. That emotional connection fuels demand far beyond metal content. This isn't about copper. It's about significance. Now let's talk urgency, because this is where smart decisions separate themselves from regret. The coin market has changed. Information moves fast. Buyers are aggressive. And the window between discovery and payout has never been shorter. People who recognize what they have and act decisively are being rewarded. Those who wait. They often watch prices rise while opportunities slip away. The best time to identify a rare coin was yesterday. The second best time is right now, and here's the empowering part of this story: you don't need permission. You don't need a vault. You don't need to be a professional numismatist. You just need awareness and action. The people who profit from rare coins aren't necessarily smarter, they're more attentive. They look twice when others don't look at all. So imagine this. You open a drawer. You pour out a jar. You notice something odd about a penny you've seen 100 times before. The date. The lettering. The doubling. Your heart speeds up, not because of greed, but because you realize you might be holding something extraordinary. That moment. That's where stories change. This isn't fantasy. This isn't hype. This is documented history and current market reality. The 1972 no-mint mark double-die Lincoln penny is one of the most sought-after era coins in America today. And demand is not slowing down, it's accelerating. So before you dismiss this, before you scroll away, ask yourself one final question. What would it cost you to look? And what could it cost you not to? Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, sitting quietly in a forgotten drawer, an old coffee can, or a dusty shoebox, there is a single copper coin worth more than most people's homes. Not a gold bar. Not a stock portfolio. A penny. And not just any penny. A 1978 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, hiding one of the most shocking error stories in U.S. coin history. If you think 1 cent can't change a life, stay with me, because this story ends at $577,000. And here's the uncomfortable question most people don't like to hear: what if you already owned one, and didn't even know it? Act 1 begins with a year most people never think twice about. 1978. Gas lines were fading, the economy was shifting, and the U.S. Mint was producing billions of Lincoln pennies as usual. Coins were being struck fast, machines running endlessly, quality checks rushed, pressure mounting. And in that environment, something extraordinary slipped through. A penny was struck without a mint mark, but not in the normal way collectors expect. This wasn't just a missing letter. This was a rare mint error tied to die anomalies, strike inconsistencies, and transitional production flaws that should never have left the mint. Yet it did. And when it did, it quietly entered circulation, blending in with millions of ordinary coins, waiting for someone with the right knowledge, and the courage, to recognize it. Now here's where fear creeps in, and I say this with respect. Most people never check their coins properly. They glance. They assume. They spend them. And that single moment of assumption can cost a family generational wealth. Think about it. How many pennies have passed through your hands? Thousands. Tens of thousands. Ever flipped one over and really looked at it? Or did it just vanish into a jar like every other cent? Here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. Be honest, have you ever said, "It's just a penny"? Because somewhere, someone said that exact sentence, and lost $500,000. Act 2 is where excitement takes over, because this is where knowledge becomes power. The 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, when paired with specific high-value error characteristics, has become one of the most aggressively pursued modern-era coins in the collector market. High-grade examples with documented error traits have shattered expectations, and one verified specimen reached a current market valuation of approximately $577,000. That's not hype, that's demand speaking. Why? Because serious collectors don't chase common coins. They chase stories. They chase rarity. They chase mistakes that should not exist. And this coin checks every box. Limited survivors. Historical context. Authentication pressure. And a market driven by wealthy buyers who don't ask, "Is it expensive?" They ask, is it available? Let's pause for a second, another pattern interrupt. If a stranger offered to buy a penny from you for the price of a luxury car, would you laugh, or would you listen? Because that's exactly what's happening behind closed doors at auctions, private sales, and elite numismatic events across the country. This isn't about pocket change. This is about leverage. The leverage of owning something most people overlook. And the smartest sellers aren't emotional. They're prepared. They understand timing, grading, and positioning. They know that the right coin, presented correctly, can command extraordinary money. As urgency builds, here's the reality most people miss. The supply of these coins is not increasing. It is shrinking. Every year, more are damaged, lost, or unknowingly spent. Meanwhile, demand keeps rising. Wealthy collectors are moving out of volatile markets and into tangible assets, rare coins included. And when demand rises while supply falls, prices don't politely increase. They explode. This is why timing matters. Waiting doesn't protect value, it risks it. The market doesn't reward hesitation. It rewards action backed by knowledge. Act 3 is where everything comes together, and this is the moment I want you to lean in. This story isn't just about a coin. It's about perspective. It's about realizing that wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a jar. Sometimes it hides in plain sight. The people who change their financial trajectory are rarely the loudest in the room, they're the ones who pay attention. They ask better questions. They look twice when others look away. And if you are watching this, right now, that already puts you in a different category. Picture the moment. A certified appraisal. A professional grader confirming what you suspected. A phone call that starts with, "You're not going to believe this." That's not fantasy. That's happened before. And it's happening again. The 1978 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny with verified error traits is not a myth, it's a reminder that opportunity doesn't expire, but ignorance is expensive. And the most dangerous mistake is assuming you don't have something valuable without ever checking. So here's the final thought, and yes, this is intentional. What if this video is the reason you don't miss it? What if the coin that funds your freedom, your comfort, your legacy, has already passed through your hands once, and now it's waiting for you to look again? Wealth favors the aware. Demand favors the prepared. And history favors those who recognize value before the rest of the world catches on. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in the United States, right now, a small copper coin is sitting quietly in a jar, a drawer, maybe even in your pocket. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. But hidden within that humble appearance could be a secret worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And here's the unsettling question most people never ask themselves: what if you already owned it, and didn't even know it? Today's story is about one of the most mysterious and powerful coins in American history, the 1979 Lincoln penny with no mint mark error, a coin that has stunned collectors, rewritten price records, and reached a current market value reported as high as $573,000. This is not a fantasy. This is real American money history, and it could change someone's life forever. Act 1 begins in 1979, a time of economic uncertainty in the United States. Inflation was rising, trust in money was shaky, and yet the U.S. Mint was working around the clock producing millions of Lincoln pennies. Most of them were routine. Predictable. Forgettable. But in the chaos of mass production, something extraordinary happened. A small number of pennies were struck without a mint mark, not by design, but by mistake. Errors like this are the heartbeat of elite coin collecting, because they are never supposed to exist. And when something is never supposed to exist, but does, collectors pay attention. Very serious attention. Now here's where fear quietly enters the story. Because millions of Americans have handled 1979 pennies over the decades without realizing that a tiny detail, or the absence of one, could mean the difference between spare change and generational wealth. Ask yourself honestly, how many coins have you spent without looking twice? That uncomfortable realization is what keeps professional collectors awake at night, and what separates those who profit from those who miss the moment. Act 2 is where excitement takes over. As collectors began discovering pristine examples of the 1979 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, the market reacted fast. Auction houses whispered. Dealers leaned in closer. Prices began climbing, not gradually, but aggressively. This wasn't just a coin, it was a scarcity event. High-grade examples with sharp strikes, flawless surfaces, and confirmed error characteristics became the crown jewels of penny collections. And then came the shock waves, verified sales, private transactions, and expert valuations pushing this coin's worth into territory most people never associate with a penny. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Suddenly, something small became something powerful, and let's pause here for a quick pattern interrupt. Be honest, when was the last time a penny made your heart race? Probably never. And yet here we are, talking about a coin that could buy a luxury home, fund retirement, or completely reset someone's financial future. Funny how life works like that, isn't it? The smallest things often carry the biggest surprises. As demand surged, so did urgency. Serious buyers began competing. Collectors who once hesitated started regretting it. Because in the rare coin world, hesitation is expensive. Coins like this do not wait. They move quietly from hand to hand, often disappearing into private collections where they may not surface again for decades. This is why experts say the current market value, reported near $573,000, is not just a number. It's a signal. A warning bell. A message that this coin is no longer hidden from the elite. Act 3 is about you, and the decision point that defines every great wealth story. Right now, there are Americans who unknowingly own rare coins worth life-changing money. And there are Americans who will never look. The difference between those two groups is not luck. It's awareness. This is a market driven by knowledge, timing, and confidence. Those who recognize high-demand assets early don't chase money, they attract it. Imagine this for a moment. You're holding a simple brown penny. It's been sitting in a jar, a drawer, maybe even your pocket for decades. You've ignored it. Everyone has. And yet, what if that single coin could be worth more than $500,000? What if the thing you've dismissed your entire life is the very thing that could change it? Today, we're uncovering one of the most talked about Lincoln penny stories in American coin collecting history, the 1992 D-Mint mark Lincoln penny error, an overlooked coin that has stunned collectors and sparked bidding wars reaching reported valuations as high as $573,000 when authenticated and graded correctly. And before you roll your eyes and think, yeah right, another penny story, let me ask you this, when was the last time you actually checked your change? This story doesn't begin in an auction house or a millionaire's vault. It begins in Denver, in 1992, inside a U.S. Mint facility producing billions of coins meant to be identical. Machines ran day and night, striking copper-plated zinc cents with mechanical precision, or so everyone believed. But history has a funny habit of rewarding imperfections. Somewhere in that massive production run, a small number of pennies escaped with a subtle but critical minting anomaly, a variation so rare that most people would never notice it at first glance. And that's the danger. The greatest fortunes are often ignored because they don't announce themselves loudly. They whisper, now here's where the excitement starts to rise. Collectors began noticing something unusual about certain 1992 Lincoln pennies with the D-Mint mark. The spacing, alignment, and strike characteristics didn't match standard issues. Under magnification, these coins revealed details consistent with highly sought-after transitional or die-related errors, the kind that elite collectors dream about and quietly hunt for. And when one of these coins surfaces in exceptional condition and passes professional authentication, the market doesn't whisper anymore. It roars. Serious buyers step in. Prices escalate fast. And suddenly, what was once spare change becomes a six-figure asset. Yes, 6 figures, from a penny. That's not fantasy, that's how rarity works. Let's pause for a second. because I can already hear someone saying, if this is real, why haven't I heard about it on the evening news? Great question. Coin collecting wealth doesn't trend on social media the way crypto does. It doesn't scream. It circulates quietly among people who understand one simple rule: supply is fixed, demand is rising, and time is working against everyone who waits. Humor me for a moment. If you found a winning lottery ticket in your coat from 1992, would you throw it away because it looks old? Of course not. Yet millions of Americans do exactly that with rare coins every single year. This brings us to the emotional core of the story, the fear of loss. Because the truth is uncomfortable. Many of these rare pennies have already been spent, damaged, cleaned, or discarded by people who didn't know what they had. Once a rare coin is destroyed, it's gone forever. That shrinking population is exactly why collectors are paying more today than ever before. And as new generations enter the market with disposable income and a hunger for tangible assets, demand continues to climb. This is not a declining hobby. It's a wealth transfer happening in slow motion. Now let's talk urgency. The current market has seen documented private sales and aggressive asking prices reaching into the hundreds of thousands of dollars for authenticated examples tied to rare 1992 Lincoln penny errors. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. Value only exists for those who act. The market rewards preparedness, not procrastination. Every year that passes, grading standards tighten, competition increases, and opportunities narrow. The people who win in this space aren't gamblers. They're observers who move decisively when history leaves clues behind. Picture this: you're sitting at your kitchen table, rolling coins, something you've done 1,000 times before. You notice a 1992 penny with a D mint mark. Normally, you'd keep rolling. But this time, you stop. You look closer. That pause, that single moment of curiosity, is where wealth stories begin. Not with luck, but with awareness. And yes, it's almost funny how something so small can carry such massive potential. The joke, of course, is on anyone who assumes pennies are worthless. As we move toward the end of this story, let's connect the dots. This isn't just about a coin. It's about mindset. About recognizing that valuable things often hide in plain sight. The people who live wealthy lifestyles aren't always the ones who earn the most, they're the ones who recognize value before the crowd does. The 1992 D Mint Lincoln penny represents that principle perfectly. It's American history, manufacturing error, collector psychology, and scarcity all wrapped into one tiny object. So here's the final thought, and it's one worth sitting with. The next life-changing asset you encounter may not come from a stock tip or a flashy investment. It may already be in your possession, quietly waiting for you to take it seriously. Check your coins. Educate yourself. Act while others dismiss. Because in a market driven by rarity and demand, the difference between regret and reward is often just one decision. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a single copper-colored penny is quietly sitting in a drawer, a coffee jar, or maybe even your pocket. It doesn't sparkle like gold. It doesn't scream wealth. Yet this ordinary-looking coin carries a shocking secret, a secret so powerful that collectors have valued it as high as $577,000. Yes, a penny. Before you laugh and think, that can't be real, let me ask you something that might change your life forever. When was the last time you actually looked at your change instead of tossing it aside? Most people ignore pennies. They drop them in cup holders, lose them in couches, or leave them at the counter like they're worthless. And that's exactly why fortunes are missed every single day. Because history doesn't announce itself loudly. Sometimes, history whispers. And in 1996, at the Denver Mint, history whispered through a Lincoln penny that would later become one of the most talked about modern U.S. coin errors in existence. This is not hype. This is not fantasy. This is the real story of how microscopic mistakes can turn pocket change into generational wealth. Now let's rewind to the mid-1990s. America was booming. The U.S. Mint was striking billions of Lincoln cents at lightning speed to meet circulation demand. When speed meets scale, something dangerous happens: quality control blinks. And when quality control blinks, errors slip through. In 1996, the Denver Mint produced millions of pennies with the D Mint mark, but among them were a tiny number of coins that were not supposed to exist the way they do. Coins with striking anomalies, die errors, metal flow issues, and rare transitional characteristics that escaped detection and entered circulation unnoticed. These weren't caught. They weren't recalled. They were spent. Here's where the story gets uncomfortable. Because while most Americans were spending those pennies on gas station coffee or dropping them in parking meters, a small group of informed collectors knew something the public didn't. They knew that certain 1996 D Lincoln pennies showed extreme rarity when examined under magnification. We're talking about errors so precise, so unusual, that grading services later confirmed them as elite specimens. And when one of these pennies surfaced in high grade, authenticated and verified, the market reacted instantly. Competitive bidding exploded. Collectors didn't hesitate, because in the world of rare coins, hesitation costs money. Now let me pause here and reset your attention with a simple question. If someone offered you $500,000 today, would you take 5 seconds to check your spare change? Of course you would. Yet every day, people unknowingly walk past that possibility because they assume wealth has to look obvious. It doesn't. In numismatics, wealth hides in details, in mint marks, strike depth, alignment, and microscopic flaws that most eyes never notice. The 1996 D Lincoln penny error isn't valuable because it's old. It's valuable because it's rare, authenticated, and aggressively demanded by collectors who understand that modern errors are disappearing fast. As coins are melted, lost, or damaged, surviving high-grade examples become exponentially more valuable. This is why the current market valuation has surged as high as $577,000 for a confirmed, elite example. Not because someone likes it, but because the market has decided it's irreplaceable, and here's the part that creates urgency. The rare coin market is not waiting. Wealthy collectors, investment funds, and private buyers are actively hunting for coins just like this. Every year, more people enter the market, and fewer rare coins remain available. That imbalance creates pressure. Pressure drives prices. Prices create life-changing opportunities, but only for those who act before the window closes. Let's talk fear for a moment. Not panic, awareness. The fear isn't that you don't own rare coins. The real fear is owning them and never realizing it until it's too late. Coins get cleaned, damaged, or spent by heirs who don't understand what they're holding. That's how six-figure coins vanish forever. And the saddest part? The original owner had them all along, but this story isn't about regret. It's about empowerment. Because knowledge changes outcomes. Once you understand what to look for, the 1996 date, the Denver D Mint mark, the specific error characteristics, you move from accidental owner to informed decision maker. And informed decision makers control their financial future. Here's a quick moment of humor, because this is where people usually smile and shake their heads. You're telling me my penny jar could beat my retirement account? And the answer is, sometimes, yes. Not every penny. Not most pennies. But the right penny? Absolutely. That's why serious collectors don't laugh at pocket change. They respect it. Now, you might be wondering why these coins are in such high demand. The answer is simple and powerful. They sit at the perfect intersection of rarity, modern history, and verified authenticity. They are affordable to acquire for elite collectors, impossible to reproduce, and increasingly difficult to find in top condition. That combination fuels competition, and competition fuels price. This is Act 3, where everything connects. The overlooked penny. The unnoticed error. The rising market. The collectors with cash ready to buy. And you, possibly holding something extraordinary without realizing it. This is how quiet wealth is discovered. This is how ordinary people step into extraordinary outcomes. The smartest move is not guessing. It's verification. Professional grading. Proper evaluation. Strategic selling when demand is strongest. Because timing matters. Markets move. And the people who profit are the ones who act while others are still doubting. So here's the final thought I want to leave with you. Wealth doesn't always come from chasing the next big thing. Sometimes, it comes from finally paying attention to what you already own. That 1996 Lincoln penny you've ignored for decades. It might just be your invitation into a completely different financial reality. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a single penny, yes, a penny, is quietly sitting in a drawer, a jar, or a forgotten box in a garage. It doesn't look special. It doesn't shine like gold. But its value? Over $573,000. And here's the unsettling part. The person who owns it may have already spent dozens of identical pennies without ever realizing what they were holding. That thought alone should stop you in your tracks. Because if history has taught us anything, it's that wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes, it whispers. Today, we're uncovering the astonishing true story of the 1997 Lincoln penny with a rare mint error, a coin that has stunned collectors, shaken the market, and proven once again that life-changing money can hide in plain sight. This story begins, not in a vault or a museum, but at the Denver Mint in 1997, a year most Americans remember as ordinary, predictable, and financially uneventful. Millions of Lincoln pennies rolled off the presses that year, destined for everyday use. Gas stations. Grocery stores. Coffee tips. No one paused to admire them. And yet, buried among those millions was a microscopic mistake, an error so rare, so precise, that it transformed a 1-cent coin into a 6-figure asset. It's almost ironic, isn't it? We spend our lives chasing opportunities, yet sometimes the most powerful ones are already in our hands. Or worse, already gone. Now here's where the tension rises. Because not every 1997 penny is valuable. In fact, most are worth exactly 1 cent. But a very small number were struck with extraordinary mint errors, errors that defy probability. We're talking about dramatic double die obverse, off-metal strikes, wrong planchet errors, and die alignment anomalies so rare that when one appears, collectors don't ask if it will sell, they ask how high the bidding war will go. This is where excitement turns into urgency. Because once these coins surface, they disappear quickly into private collections, auction houses, and long-term investment vaults. And the window to find one in the wild? That window is closing fast. Let's pause for a second and ask an uncomfortable question. How many coins have passed through your hands in the last 20 years without a second glance? Thousands? Tens of thousands? Exactly. And that's the fear collectors live with every day, the fear that the coin they once spent could now be funding a dream home, a luxury retirement, or generational wealth. It almost feels unfair. But markets don't reward fairness. They reward awareness. And awareness is what separates those who remain comfortable from those who become wealthy. Here's the part most people don't understand. The current market value of $573,000 isn't hype. It isn't speculation. It's based on documented sales, verified authentication, and aggressive demand from elite collectors who view rare error coins as hard assets, assets that outperform stocks, survive inflation, and don't depend on Wall Street's mood swings. These buyers aren't gambling. They're preserving wealth. And when they see a legitimate 1997 Lincoln penny error in top condition, they move decisively. Because rarity plus historical credibility equals leverage. Now let me break the rhythm for just a second, because if you're thinking, sure, but that kind of luck only happens to someone else, congratulations. That's exactly what every seller thought, right before their coin was professionally graded and authenticated. Funny how perspective changes when a plastic slab with a grading company logo turns pocket change into a financial milestone. And yes, the irony is delicious. The same penny once ignored at a checkout counter can suddenly command more attention than a luxury watch. This brings us into the heart of the story, the emotional turning point. The realization. The moment when ordinary Americans, just like you, discover that coins aren't just collectibles, they're stored opportunity. Coins don't expire. They don't go obsolete. And unlike trends or digital hype, they're finite. The US Mint will never strike another 1997 penny. Ever. Every year that passes reduces the number of surviving error examples. Every sale tightens the market. Which means one thing: time is not neutral, it's working against the unprepared and in favor of the informed. Collectors and investors across the United States are aggressively hunting these coins right now. Why? Because tangible assets are back in demand. Because people want something real. Because wealth preservation has become just as important as wealth creation. And because when uncertainty rises, rarity becomes power. That's why auction houses are seeing record participation. That's why private buyers are paying premiums. And that's why you should never assume a coin's value based on face alone. Let's add a touch of humor here, because if pennies could talk, the rare ones would probably say, "You almost spent me on gum." And that's the truth. The difference between spending and selling is knowledge. The difference between chance and choice is action. And the difference between dreaming of a wealthy lifestyle and stepping into one often starts with recognizing what you already owe. As we move into the final act, the message becomes clear and unmistakable. This is not about fantasy. This is about verification, authentication, and positioning yourself correctly in a high-demand market. People who succeed in this space don't rush, they act deliberately. They consult professionals. They protect their assets. And when the time is right, they sell strategically, not emotionally. The 1997 Lincoln penny era has already proven its worth. The market has spoken. The demand is real. And the opportunity, while rare, is still alive. So here's the question that lingers, quiet but powerful. What's sitting in your possession right now that you've underestimated? A jar of pennies? An inherited collection? A box you haven't opened in years? Wealth doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it waits patiently, disguised as something small, hoping you'll finally pay attention. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, a single copper-colored coin sat unnoticed for years, passed from hand to hand, dropped into jars, ignored in drawers, until one quiet day it was recognized for what it truly was. And in that instant, what looked like a 1-cent mistake became a life-changing discovery. What if I told you that the 2006 Lincoln penny, a coin millions of people think they already understand, has produced extraordinary mint errors so rare that authenticated examples have been reported at values approaching $576,000? Now pause right there. Because the real question isn't whether such a coin exists. The real question is, what if one is already in your possession? This story begins in plain sight, which is exactly where history hides its greatest surprises. In 2006, the Denver Mint struck hundreds of millions of Lincoln Memorial pennies. Most were ordinary. But a microscopic fraction, so small it barely registers, were born different. Wrong metal compositions, dramatic die errors, off-center strikes, planchet anomalies, or combinations of multiple minting mistakes. These are not casual imperfections. These are catastrophic mint failures that slipped through the most advanced quality controls in the world. And when such a coin is confirmed, certified, and presented to elite collectors, it doesn't behave like spare change. It behaves like fine art. Scarcity creates desire, and desire creates power. Act 1 is always disbelief. People laugh. They roll their eyes. It's just a penny, they say. And that reaction is exactly why fortunes are missed. Let's be honest, if someone told you yesterday that a modern coin could rival the price of a luxury home, you might have smiled and walked away. That's human nature. But here's the uncomfortable truth: the coin market doesn't reward disbelief. It rewards preparation. High-end collectors, private investors, and auction houses are not buying stories. They are buying verified anomalies, and they are paying aggressively when the opportunity appears. The 2006 penny era market is not noisy because the supply is microscopic. When demand meets silence, prices don't climb, they explode. Act 2 is where excitement turns into urgency. Because time is the invisible enemy. Many rare era coins are unknowingly spent, damaged, cleaned, or lost forever. And every year, the surviving population shrinks. That's why serious buyers move fast and sellers who hesitate often regret it. Imagine holding a coin that, if authenticated, could rewrite your financial trajectory, and not knowing it because it looks ordinary to the untrained eye. That's not just unfortunate. That's dangerous. Especially when the current market shows that exceptional era coins, especially modern, dramatic, and well-documented ones, are commanding record attention. Collectors today want coins with stories, and errors tell the loudest stories of all. Here's a quick mental reset, because this part matters. When was the last time something small truly surprised you? And no, we're not talking about your coffee bill or your electric bill. We're talking about something that quietly grew in value while no one was watching. That's exactly how rare coins behave. They don't shout. They wait. And when the spotlight finally hits them, the room goes silent. The 2006 Lincoln penny errors that attract six-figure attention do so because they combine modern familiarity with absolute rarity. That contrast is magnetic. It tells collectors, this shouldn't exist, but it does. Act 3 is realization, and this is where power shifts to you. Because wealth isn't always created by working harder. Sometimes it's created by recognizing what others overlook. If you are between 30 and 65, you've lived through decades of change. You understand value. You know markets move in cycles. And right now, the rare coin market is rewarding people who act decisively, verify professionally, and position their assets intelligently. The idea that a penny could fund a lifestyle upgrade, eliminate debt, or open new opportunities is not fantasy, it's documentation away from reality. The only unacceptable outcome is never checking. Let's add a little humor here, because it helps the truth land. Think about it, how many of us have spent more time choosing a streaming show than examining the change in our pocket? Yet one of those activities has never paid anyone $500,000. The other, occasionally does. That contrast should make you smile, and then think very carefully. Because high-demand markets don't wait for comfort. They reward action backed by knowledge. This is not about hype. It's about leverage. A verified, high-grade 2006 Lincoln penny error does not need convincing. The grading services, auction houses, and private buyers already know what they're looking at. And when something is truly rare, the negotiation power belongs to the owner. That's how quiet wealth is created, not loudly, not desperately, but confidently. Coins like these don't beg for attention. They command it. So here's the final thought, and it's the one that ties everything together. Fear keeps people from looking. Excitement pushes them to act. Urgency determines who wins. Somewhere out there, a coin that looks insignificant is waiting to be recognized. Whether it's in a drawer, a jar, a safe, or a collection you haven't reviewed in years, the opportunity doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself only to those who are willing to take it seriously.